Donald Trump threatened to use military force to seize Greenland, and Canada and France answered by planting their flags and nuke and telling Washington, plainly, you cannot have it. Greenland's population is just 57,000 people. That's it. And when Trump tried to buy them, threaten them, and tariff their allies into submission, those 57,000 people said no. They marched to the U.S. consulate wearing red hats that read, "Make America Go Away." They chanted, "Greenland is not for sale." And as they protested, Canadian and French diplomats raised their own flags in the capital, opening permanent consulates, not symbolic visits. Permanent diplomatic missions designed to block American expansion. Trump wanted European support for annexation. Instead, he got unified opposition. Today, we're breaking down how Trump's Greenland threats united NATO against him. Why Canada and France opened consulates on the same day. What Greenlanders chanted as they marched on the U.S. consulate. And how threatening to invade your allies became the fastest diplomatic defeat of Trump's presidency. This is the story of how Canada and France permanently blocked U.S. entry into Greenland. Stay until the end. And before we dive in, if you value in-depth analysis like this, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you think. Friday morning. Nuke. Greenland. 2 flag ceremonies. Same day. Same message to Washington. Canada's foreign minister raised the Canadian flag at the opening of Canada's new consulate, announcing the move publicly. While en route, she described it as strengthening Canada's presence, partnerships, and leadership in the Arctic. Standing beside her was Canada's Governor-General, an Indigenous leader who grew up in northern Quebec, speaks Inuktitut, and understands Arctic life firsthand. Inuit leaders from across Canada attended. A Canadian Coast Guard vessel docked in the harbor. The flag went up. The consulate opened. Canada now has a permanent diplomatic presence in Greenland. That same day, France did the same. France appointed its first ever consul general to Nuuk, becoming the first European Union country to establish a consulate in Greenland. The French ambassador to Denmark made the message explicit. This was not symbolism. This was concrete cooperation and alliance, and a direct reaffirmation of Denmark's territorial integrity. No ambiguity. France opposes American annexation. The timing wasn't accidental. Trump had spent weeks escalating threatening military force, tariffs, and annexation. So Canada and France chose that exact moment to act. Not temporary missions, permanent staff, permanent budgets, permanent opposition. Before Friday, only the United States and Iceland had consulates in Nuuk. Now, Canada and France have joined them. Germany is considering one. The Netherlands is exploring options. Sweden is discussing it. Every new consulate is a vote against Trump, a vote for sovereignty, a vote for indigenous rights, a vote that NATO members do not annex each other. Trump wanted to isolate Denmark. Instead, he isolated the United States. This wasn't just diplomacy, it was solidarity. Canada and Greenland share the world's longest maritime border. Inuit communities on both sides share language, family ties, and centuries-old trade relationships. The capital of Canada's Nunavut territory is just a 1-hour flight from Nuuk. This isn't abstract geopolitics. It's daily life. An Inuit leader traveling with Canada's delegation put it plainly. Arctic communities understand they are now at the center of a geopolitical fight, when that's happening in their homeland, not on a map. That's what Trump ignored. The Arctic is not an empty space waiting to be claimed. It is a homeland, and Greenlanders made that clear in the streets. Thousands marched in Nuuk, nearly a quarter of the capital's population, through freezing temperatures to the U.S. consulate. They carried signs, waved flags, chanted, "Greenland is not for sale," in Greenlandic. The Prime Minister joined them. Red hats reading, "Make America Go Away," went viral. A parody of Trump's own slogan. They sold out repeatedly and appeared in protests from Nuuk to Copenhagen to Canada. A 9-year-old girl held a handmade sign that read, "Greenland is not for sale." Her parents said it was important to teach children they're allowed to speak up when they're being bullied by anyone, even a country. That image traveled the world. Then Trump escalated again, announcing tariffs while protesters were still outside the consulate. Every party in Greenland's parliament issued a joint statement. Conservatives, liberals, independence advocates, everyone, they rejected U.S. control outright. Even leaders who had campaigned for eventual independence from Denmark changed course. Trump's threats made independence look vulnerable, an opening for American pressure. Staying with Denmark became a defense strategy. That was Trump's doing. Trump didn't stop there. He openly refused to rule out military force against a NATO ally. He threatened tariffs against Denmark, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Finland, the UK, and the Netherlands, all NATO members, for defending sovereignty. Then suddenly, after meeting NATO leadership, Trump declared victory. He announced a vague framework agreement. No details, no documents, and quietly, very quietly, he dropped the tariffs. No February tariffs. No June escalation. That wasn't a win. That was a retreat. The framework was an exit ramp, diplomatic language for nothing decided. Meanwhile, everything Trump tried to stop happened anyway. Canada opened a consulate. France opened a consulate. Greenland's parliament unanimously rejected U.S. control. Denmark reaffirmed sovereignty. NATO began planning an Arctic security mission. Denmark deployed elite Arctic troops semi-permanently. European allies joined exercises. For the first time, NATO prepared to defend a member state against another member's territorial threats. Trump didn't fracture the alliance. He unified it against himself. Greenland does have rare earth minerals worth trillions. The U.S. could have partnered with Denmark and Greenland under existing sovereignty. Investment was always possible. Trump chose threats instead of partnership, ownership instead of cooperation, and he lost. Greenland banned foreign political funding to prevent U.S. interference. Consulates became permanent barriers. NATO unity hardened. American soft power collapsed. Trump wanted Greenland. He got unanimous rejection. He wanted European submission. He got resistance. He wanted to divide NATO. He united it. On the same day, Canada and France planted their flags in Nuuk, and the Arctic territory Trump claimed was essential became the place that proved the simple truth. Threatening your allies doesn't make you stronger. It makes them stand together against you. And that unity is the part Trump never understood. Power isn't just aircraft carriers or tariffs. It's trust. It's credibility. It's whether other nations believe you'll respect their sovereignty tomorrow if they work with you today. And on Greenland, Trump burned all three at once. For decades, the United States had quiet influence in the Arctic, not through threats, but through cooperation, joint research, shared defense infrastructure, scientific partnerships, investment under Danish sovereignty. Greenlanders didn't see America as an occupier. They saw it as a partner. Trump shattered that perception in a matter of weeks. Once you threaten to invade an ally, you can't walk that back with the framework. Once you talk about people's homelands like real estate listings, you can't pretend it was just negotiating leverage. Greenlanders heard it. Europe heard it. NATO heard it, and they reacted accordingly. What happened next wasn't temporary outrage, it was structural change. Permanent consulates mean permanent staff, long-term budgets, intelligence sharing, cultural exchange, and political presence. Every flag raised in Nuuk reduced Washington's leverage and increased Greenland's options. That's how influence is diluted, not in speeches, but in institutions. And those institutions are multiplying. European governments began coordinating Arctic policy without Washington at the center. Defense planning shifted. Investment conversations moved. Indigenous representation was elevated in ways the U.S. had never prioritized. Greenland stopped being a bilateral issue between Washington and Copenhagen and became a European and transatlantic one. That shift matters more than any headline, because from this point forward, any U.S. administration, Trump or otherwise, faces a different Arctic reality. Greenland is no longer diplomatically isolated. It's embedded in a network of allies, prepared to defend its autonomy, and Greenlanders know it. The protests weren't just about Trump. They were about drawing a line for the future, about saying, We are not a bargaining chip. Not a buffer zone, not a prize in someone else's rivalry. We decide. That's why the chants mattered. That's why the red hats mattered. That's why a 9-year-old holding a cardboard sign mattered. They turned a superpower's threat into a legitimacy crisis. Trump framed Greenland as something he could take. Greenland reframed itself as something that must be defended. And in doing so, it forced NATO to confront an uncomfortable truth. Alliances aren't just tested by enemies outside the club, but by behavior inside it. Canada and France understood that immediately. They didn't issue vague statements. They didn't wait for the crisis to cool down. They showed up. They raised flags. They made commitments that can't be reversed with a tweet. That's why those consulates opened on the same day. Not coincidence. Coordination. 2 countries, 1 message. Sovereignty is not negotiable. Trump may still claim he won, but look at the map now. Look at the deployments. Look at the diplomacy. Look at the laws Greenland passed to protect itself. Every outcome points the same direction. No annexation, no submission, no isolation of Denmark. Just a stronger, more unified Arctic built specifically to ensure that this never happens again. Trump wanted Greenland to prove American dominance. Instead, Greenland proved the limits of it, and that may be the most lasting consequence of all.